What is up, Buddha Nation? Welcome back inside another episode of the Straight Up Saints podcast presented by Boot Crew Media and Maker's Mark. And this is a very early edition for me. I mean, for you guys, it's probably gonna be regular morning time, but I'm pretty exhausted right now getting this up. But this is a really important topic. And I didn't record a pod yesterday when most people did, and this wasn't from me just not wanting to touch this subject because I was always going to have something on this subject, but it was Sunday. I wanted to enjoy my Sunday. It's kind of what I decided to do instead. And obviously, it ended up being a hectic Sunday anyway because Tom Brady decided that 4 weeks with his family was enough time to come out of retirement. So at the end of the day, tried to enjoy my weekend. Couldn't fully do that to its fullest. But anyway, let's get into this Deshaun Watson topic because it is without a doubt, obviously, the biggest story I think that's going to happen this year because it's more than football. And before I start going into this rant that may last 15 minutes, it may last 10 minutes, it may last 20 minutes, but will last a decent duration of time, I want to make a few things clear while you're listening because I think the one thing that is so lacking on Twitter is just mutual respect between people. And I'm not here to start saying we need to all have mutual respect on Twitter because that would be me asking for the world because I know people just aren't going to do that. But if you are listening to this podcast, then it means at some level you respect me and I respect you. And I'm not here to sway your opinion with what I'm about to say. And I'm not here to say your opinion is wrong because at the end of the day, it's your opinion. I'm not here to say my opinion is right just because it's coming out of my mouth. I'm not some holy figure who has never done anything wrong in my life. We all do wrong. We're all human. So when I go into this, it's more so for me to say my piece and my piece on this Deshaun Watson dilemma, I should say, and why this topic's been so incredibly difficult and kind of frustrating because the reality is when you talk about a subject like this, you should be as truthful as possible. And that's what I'm going to do. So let's get this thing started. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson. And I'll tell you guys the truth is, before all these allegations came out, I thought the world of Deshaun Watson because we didn't really know too much about the person or the off field stuff. And you're looking at the quarterback, and my God, from a talent level, he is that good. Like when people talk about trades and stuff and what they'd give up for a player of his caliber, realistically, the team acquiring a player of his caliber 9 times out of 10 should win that trade because he's that good. He's that good. The problem is it's not a simple matter. It's not as much as just trading for Deshaun Watson and Deshaun Watson's on your team and all is good. You got your franchise quarterback and that's it. There's so much. The talent's undeniable, but so is the baggage. And when you look at this, I think what makes it even worse is it's almost not a clear matter. We're in that gray area, but it's not a gray area where you can easily take a side and say, "Oh, I'm 100% right." It's a gray area that's super uncomfortable. And it's not just for me. I'm not the only person who feels that this way, and I'm probably, not the only person who the past 2 days has gotten shit for feeling this way because I know on Twitter it's all about the almighty W and winning games and eventually winning the Super Bowl. And I promise you, there's nothing more I want to see than the Saints win the Super Bowl. But there are limits to what means more to me than winning football games, which again, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to talk about the Saints doing well and winning games. And I'd imagine if they trade for Deshaun Watson, that department bumps up, that probably would win more games. I'm not naive about that. It would be an immediate upgrade at the most important position in football if he stays on the field. And it's an upgrade that you have for years to come, maybe a decade or more. I get that. And I know that when people hear this Deshaun Watson thing, and I knew it was going to happen on Friday because when you work in this industry, you know what's basically going to happen with things like this. And most people knew Deshaun Watson wasn't going to face criminal charges. And now that he won't, we know that's a fact. He will not face criminal charges. What is not a fact is that he's definitely innocent. And what is not a fact is that he's definitely guilty. Once again, we're in that gray area. And I know that for a lot of people, his alleged actions, which again, people are going to say, Chris, you have to use alleged. I'm using alleged for the reason because there's no guarantee it happened, but there's also no guarantee that it didn't happen. Hence the word alleged. It puts a lot of people in a tough spot. And if you are someone or know someone who's been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed and they're a survivor of that, and they have these memories that deep down are just kind of eating away at their core. The thought of Deshaun Watson on their favorite football team most likely triggers unkind memories. And I think what we failed to do as a whole, and this has nothing to do about football, I just think this is society in general. If it doesn't affect us, we don't give a fuck. And it's easy for someone who's never had someone affected by this particular incident to say, I don't give a shit. Put Deshaun Watson on my favorite team, and I'll go talk about it with my boys or something, and I'll brag about my team having a top 5 quarterback, which Deshaun Watson is. And it's easy for them because they've never been in that. But if you know someone who has, maybe it is different for you. Maybe the thought of Deshaun Watson on your favorite team isn't comfortable for you. And that's why I say at the end of the day, it's about respect. You can want Deshaun Watson on your team. I'm not arguing with anyone who wants Deshaun Watson on the team. I know a lot of people who I genuinely love talking to on Twitter. They want Deshaun Watson on their team. I don't argue with their opinion. It's their opinion. They want Deshaun Watson. You can have him. That's totally fine. But I feel like that specific example, man, and my God, there are a lot of people who have dealt with this particular issue. They probably don't want him on the Saints. Or how about the great women that do cover the Saints? Whether it's people like Kat Terrell or Amy Just or Maddie Hudak. Like, there's so many really good women that do cover the Saints. And I know the argument could be, well, this isn't the first time the Saints have had bad PR. And it's not. And it won't be the last time because this team just kind of gravitates to the bullshit. That's what they always do. So I get that. And I'm not going to act like this is the first time the Saints have done something shady or involved themselves in something they probably shouldn't involve themselves in. I know that it's happened before. But I think to that too, like you're going to enter, if he gets traded, you're going to enter a room with a decent amount of women in there. And rightfully, there should probably be more and should be more diversity in the media room. And I'll be the first one to fucking say that. But even then alone, you're going to walk in. How are you going to address them and make sure they feel comfortable? Because what happened, whether or not you are innocent or guilty, what happened in the sense that 22 women did file civil cases against him. And that looks bad. Whether or not he did it, it looks bad. And that's something we can't deny. And I think for a lot of people, and this comes down to the respect factor yet again, I see so many people talk about, well, women could lie, trying to get a payday, blah, blah, blah. It's not just one woman, dude. It's 22. And if you want me to believe that 22 women were paid to lie and say that they were sexually harassed or assaulted by Deshaun Watson so the Texans could send a message for him wanting out of Houston, that is fucking insane. And I think more importantly, that is such a disservice to any woman who has or is thinking about coming out with their story because they probably feel like their stuff's going to get swept under the rug. And guess what? If 22 women actually were sexually assaulted / harassed, and now their story would be getting swept under the rug by fans, and this is in a public light, how do you think every other woman who isn't dealing with a guy like Deshaun Watson could even be dealing with just a regular person? They're not maybe going to feel like I could come out with my story. Because is it going to get the proper respect and the proper justice that it would say? And again, I do not know if Deshaun Watson's guilty. I cannot make this any more clear, and I don't know if he's innocent. But I think as a whole, I love football. But it is not more fucking important to me than constantly dismissing what women have to say, which is a big part of Twitter. A big part. Anytime any athlete is accused of something, for some reason, 99 fucking percent of Twitter is like, nope, it's a lie. They're out for the payday. And dude, there are people who lie. I totally get that. But sometimes, man, you gotta just put football to the side and just look at the bigger picture. And I know people have tweeted at me the last day and a half, and it shouldn't bother me because at the end of the day, I know Twitter's just full of trolls. But I have people tweet me, Chris, you don't mean it. You don't actually want Deshaun Watson on the Saints. I'm sorry, you don't actually, wait, I don't know what I'm saying right now, but you don't actually not want Deshaun Watson on the Saints, excuse me. You're just playing the role for Twitter and what. I don't want Deshaun Watson on the Saints. I've said it once, I've said it twice, I'll say it 100 times if I have to. That doesn't mean I won't be a fan of this team. I'll always be a fan of this team, God willing, They don't do anything super egregious. By that, I mean the people running the show, which they probably already have done shit egregious. This does not act like the church scandal hasn't coming out before. But something like this doesn't make me say, oh, I'm not doing straight up Saints anymore. I love doing it because I love talking with you guys. Because at the end of the day, this is what this is for. I'm just an average person who likes a team that you guys like and happen to like that community of fans that talk about it. And when I come on here, it's my way of kind of expressing how I feel and then hoping you guys will interact with me back and we could start a dialogue. And that's what it's always been, and that's what it will continue to be. And I've never thought once while this thing was going down, like, oh man, I gotta change my profession, or I don't want to do podcasts about Saints. That's bullshit. I want to talk about this team. But just because I like the team and just because I'll want to cover the team from the outside, obviously in an independent way, does not mean I have to like the quarterback. Because there's been a lot of players on the Saints that I have not liked or respected before, but I'm not going to penalize the other 50-something guys on this roster because of one. That'd be ridiculous. And I've seen some people on Twitter also say, Chris, you got to be fair. You're being selective with who you're criticizing. That's bullshit. Because when the Saints first signed Jameis Winston in 2020, I brought up what Jameis Winston did. And I brought up that Jameis isn't just a guy who was flawed on a football level in terms of the interception problem. He was flawed in terms of his history. And yet, this is where I'm going to be fair. Just because I was hesitant about Jameis Winston, I kind of tried to be fair and say, okay, let's see how he does. And I think I would say, and most people would probably agree, that over the last couple of years, Jameis Winston showed incredible maturity. Now, maybe a guy like Deshaun Watson can do the exact same. Maybe he comes in, gets traded to the Saints, proves people wrong, and in 5 years' time, this whole thing is forgotten. And we don't even remember or really talk about it because he matured so much that you probably question if he was that guy that they say he was in those allegations. But it's not just one or two allegations like Jameis Winston. It's 22 of them. And just because you have a higher number doesn't mean that Deshaun Watson allegedly would be a worse person than Jameis Winston. You still did something wrong. It's still in the same category. And at the end of the day, if these two were to do that, it's beyond fucked up. Beyond. And maybe, again, Deshaun's not truly at fault. Maybe he's not that guy. But I see so many people trying to justify this move just because you want to see your favorite football team win a fucking game. And I'll never, ever feel that way. And I'm not saying the Saints need to have a goody two-shoes at quarterback because Taysom Hill seems like a nice dude. I can't watch 17 games of Taysom Hill at quarterback. So spare me that for people who think it's like, oh, Chris needs a choir boy there to play quarterback. I don't. Just need you to do the basic decency, which is treat women with respect, which I hope is the case. If Deshaun Watson gets traded here, we see over time that he's matured. But there's way too many people tiptoeing the line here. And I think a line almost needs to be drawn. Either you do not want Deshaun Watson because at the end of the day, either you don't believe what went down or you read these women's stories and you just think, man, there's just no way I can root for a guy like this. Or you do want Deshaun Watson because at the end of the day, you do not know these players. You're just there for your personal happiness of watching your team win. And if that's the case, that's your opinion. I get that. That's fine. But I do see a lot of people who have come out about this and made it clear that they don't want Deshaun Watson. Whether it's Ryan and Adam from the Saints Twitter podcast, whether it's Maddie, whether it's John Sigler, whether it's Dylan Sanders, whether it is Ross Jackson. And instead of just respecting these people's opinions, it's just always got to be a madhouse. Always. Like there's just always a personal attack on Twitter for no fucking reason. And that's what I'm seeing the last couple of days. So when people say, hey, Chris, why aren't you tweeting about this? Because I made it clear I don't want Deshaun Watson on the Saints. And that's fine. You don't have to like my opinion. And when Deshaun Watson comes to Saints, I'll still be here to talk about it. If he does come here, I'll be here to talk about the trade and what it means from the football side. And from the football side, let's not fucking kid ourselves. He would make the Saints a better team on paper. And I know he would be the best option for them in terms of long-term talent. Those two are off the table. I can think one thing, but understand what he would do from a football level. But it still doesn't make it an easy situation for me. It doesn't make it easier to get on board with all this. That's just how I feel. And that's how I'll always feel about the situation at the end of the day. And if Deshaun comes here, I'm not just going to completely, let's say, close my thoughts on him. I will give him time and time and time and time and time to prove that he could mature from this and make sure he never gets himself in a situation like he just did. And I would give him that time. But my initial thoughts and my initial reaction to that would obviously be of one where I don't really need to kind of dip my fingers in these waters at all. Like, it's just something I wouldn't have thought of. And I know winning's important, and it's important for the Saints. You don't go into this business thinking you always got to make the soft move. And I literally said last episode, are the Saints going to jump out of their comfort zone? They have. And I guess at one hand, it's like, Chris, you can't complain. You said jump out of their comfort zone. They're jumping out of their comfort zone. And I agree on that part. It is what I said. Jump out of your comfort zone. But I also said in that podcast, jumping out of your comfort zone does not mean going after Deshaun Watson, because, man, if you do a trade like this, just know the backlash will be there. And you're not going to hear any more from me. This is it. This is the last time I'm going to rant about this subject, because then at the end of the day, you guys aren't here to just listen to me vent. You're listening to me to kind of give my thoughts on something that may be of interest to you. So this will be the only rant for now in the immediate future that I will have on Deshaun Watson. If he gets traded here, I'll talk about the trade. I'll talk about the compensation. I'll talk about what it does for the Saints. Talk about the looming suspension that he will get, because I see a lot of people thinking he will play week 1. If he gets traded to the Saints or he gets traded anywhere, he will get suspended. Like, I hope people do know that part. And I hope you know that the Saints know that. The Saints will trade for him knowing probably going to miss the first 6 to 8 games, maybe more. So as long as you guys know that, that's cool. But I'll wrap it up with this. All I'm asking for is for you to respect my opinion, and I promise you I will respect yours. If you want Deshaun Watson on the Saints, that's your opinion. If you don't want Deshaun Watson on the Saints, it's also your opinion. At the end of the day, my stance on this is what it's always been. I just can't get behind a trade for a guy who's been accused of what he's been accused of. And I know people are going to say, well, he didn't get convicted. It isn't that simple. It's never been that simple. And unfortunately, that's just the life we live in. Trading for Deshaun Watson will always be uncomfortable and as damaging as it will probably be rewarding if he stays on the field. That's the risk when you're playing with a double-edged sword. It always has been. And I think the next 24 to 48 hours will be interesting, because I do genuinely feel he will get traded within the next 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. And right now, I can't help but think he does get traded to the New Orleans Saints. But I'll be here. I'll be covering it. I do love this team. When you guys see a tweet from me that says, hey, by the way, I'm trying to start something talking about movies and podcasting, or doing a little movie YouTube page, do not think that's, oh, here comes Chris being dramatic, walking away from the Saints. No, I'll be here. It's just another thing that I've really wanted to do for a while, and I feel like now's the day to ask. So when you guys see that, don't think that's an overreaction. I've been meaning to ask you guys for a long time your thoughts on that, but that'll be for Twitter. But again, I hope whoever disagrees with me, at the end of the day, you listen to this podcast and you said, I understand where you're coming from. And if you don't agree with me, understand that I understand where you're coming from, because maybe you're not affected by this, or you don't really care enough about the people who do play for your football team, because you feel like at the end of the day, you know, it is just a business and you want to see your team win. And that gives you the personal satisfaction. And that is totally okay for some. I have no problem with that if that's you. It's just not me. And I would hope that we can go back to just being on Twitter and having fun interactions, because that's what it's always been about for me. And it will always be about that for me. And the day that it's not, it's probably the day that I just probably walk to the side. But for now, that's just how I feel. And it will always be a tricky subject. And I will always think of this as something where if you're not 100% honest with it, you're doing a disservice. And if I really, really felt that I wanted Deshaun Watson on the Saints, I would come on this podcast and I would tell you guys, man, I would want him on the Saints. And he probably will get traded to the Saints at this rate. I'll be here in about 5 hours from now doing another podcast. But I would feel really shitty if I didn't come on here and tell you guys how I really, really feel about this subject. But that's going to do it here for this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. If you listen through this entire rant and you disagree with me and you came away from this and said, all right, Chris, let's agree to disagree, I respect the fuck out of you. And if not, that's okay. You don't have to agree or even just understand my side. I just want to speak my piece because that's all we got. So I'll do it for this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast, guys. As always, it's been a pleasure talking with, interacting with you guys. Having you guys even come on here to listen to my podcast means the world to me. Can't stress enough how much I love you guys. But I'll be back with another episode later this week, maybe even later today, depending how the first 24 hours of this crazy period go of tampering and all this bullshit. I will probably be back here. I can totally envision it now. So expect another episode very soon on the Straight Up Saints podcast, guys, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.